And welcome back to African Perspective with me, Alderin Simpi. I'm joined this evening by political analysts Patrick Gathara and Michael Agwanda, who are joining me from Kenya as we look at the political developments that are underway in Kenya. And one of the issues, Michael, earlier on you spoke about the 2018 meeting that took place and the handshake that took place as well. People then asked about, is there possibility of constitutional changes? And President Uhuru Kenyatta's response was that constitutional changes is not an answer to all our issues. We should focus on development and less on politics. However, all of that has certainly now changed because now he is also pushing for the amendment of the constitution. What is in it for him, considering that his term comes to an end next year? It's his final term as the president of the country.
Thank you very much. That's a really, really important question. But let me just allude to a little bit about what Patrick was talking about and the question you asked earlier in regards of whether the deputy president is definitely going to run for president or not. Take this to the bank. The deputy president will run whether with alliances or not, because one is, even if he doesn't become the president of the Republic of Kenya, he has a very high chance of becoming an opposition leader that will be funded in the new changes in the BBI constitutional change, where it will be an opposition leader by having more votes or having lots of members of parliament and then becoming an official opposition leader. That will be funded by the state coffer, and he'll get security, he'll get cabinet ministers and many other goodies that will come with it. He has the numbers from the Rift Valley, and he could easily amount to an opposition leader. That means a president waiting in future. In regards to some of the statements that the president made, as you've alluded to, he actually said very clearly that changing the constitution was not a solution to the problems that are in this country. Things have actually changed, and when they had the handshake, they seem to have agreed on a number of things. National ethos, they seem to have agreed to work on issues of gender, they seem to have agreed on working on issues of creating jobs and having a government or a country that does not go to, have strife every 5 years during general election. And to them, that was more important than anything else. But they also, we've also realized that President Kenyatta is hugely concerned about his legacy as he leaves the office. And I think what he's looking at here is perhaps this is, in the history of this republic, this is the only time that we've not seen a very strong Kikuyu presidential candidate. In the past, there have been very strong Kikuyu candidates, and remember that they've dominated the presidency of this country for many, many years. And for that reason, without having a very strong Kikuyu candidate, it is essential for him, and it is very, very important for him to ensure that whatever he wants, not only for the Kikuyu community, but also for the other, counties and the other communities, is entrenched into law. And we've seen a lot of members of parliament added into the BBI that is supposed to be changing the constitution. That simply means that the members of parliament will be coming in not just extra money, but they will also be having what we call CDF money that will be going into some of these constituencies. And that the people that have hugely benefited from this are people from central Kenya and part of Rift Valley.
So would you then say, Michael, that also that tribal politics is also at play here?
No doubt, no doubt. Kenya is driven by tribal politics. I think what is trying to ring fence is to ensure that even if Kikuyu does not amount to be the next president in 2022, there will be safely guarded in the constitution, and that there will be resources both for the counties as well as the constituencies that will develop the places where the president does not come from permanently and without, influence of the president, the incoming president, which I think is very, very important. But again, we've seen him move very quickly into infrastructure service and delivery. We've seen more roads being done in the country. We've seen expressway being done to the airport as well. So I think he's also very, very concerned with his legacy. And he might not have been very lucky on the 4-point agenda that he had initiated as a development track record that he wanted to leave behind. But I think he's thinking that if this constitution is changed, then his people and many other communities that perhaps will not have had a better income in terms of county allocation will have it, entrenched into the constitution. I think that will be the best.
Let me ask Patrick that same question. Patrick, I see you nodding there.
Well, I've got to say, I disagree that this is about what the rest of us get out of it, about getting roads or anything for people. I don't think PBI has anything to do with that. I think it is about, first and foremost, entrenching impunity. It is about entrenching a system that favors the elite in power and ensures that they're never going to be held to account. As I said before, we've had a process that looked at the problems that Kenya has in the aftermath of the
Isn't one of those problems, Patrick, also politics entrenched in tribalism?
Well, it is. But again, you've got to understand how this entrenching happens, that it is politicians who drive it, And in the BBI, what they basically are saying is that the problem is the Kenyans themselves. In the same way they talk about corruption as if it is a cultural problem. It's Kenyans who are corrupt. It's not. It is the political class that is corrupt. It is stealing from Kenyans. It's not Kenyans stealing from themselves. When you look at the BBI and you ask, why is it doesn't speak in detail about reforming the election system?
What?
Where is that?
To what, for instance?
So our electoral system was identified. If you look at the Kriegler report in the 2008, that followed the election, it said that is really one of the biggest problems we have. Our violence is really routed around disputed, especially presidential elections. That is where we have a problem. In 2013, 2017, you have disputes. And the commission laid out some of the things that we should do to resolve that, to ensure that the system, when it gives out a verdict, that even the people who lose will believe it. None of those, or the vast majority of those recommendations have not been implemented. If you look at how the 2013 election was carried out, it was a shambles. All the measures that were supposed to be in place didn't work. And I think that we need to go back and ask, how do we get a system, an electoral system, that Kenyans can actually believe in? And that is absent from BBI. It talks about it sort of in very vague terms, but as if that is not the problem. That is.
But is the problem, Patrick, with the declaration of the electoral results also not a problem with the individual leaders themselves who continuously reject the election results when they come in? And we can speak about the Raila Odinga. The first round of the elections was disputed. At least the Constitutional Court then vindicated him. But then also the second round of the elections were disputed. I don't know where things change. Up to now, all we know where Raila Odinga stands is that those elections are disputed.
Yes, but you have to ask why they are disputed. Our reform, if you look at the history of reform where elections are concerned, has always been a matter of doing it at the last minute. So in 2016 is when we start pushing to reform the system, for 2017. And all that means is that everything is done haphazardly. The IEBC, our electoral monitoring body, said that any reforms to the electoral system must be in place 2 years to the election. Well, we have a year to go. There have been no reforms. And it's not that we don't have problems. We know we have problems. The Supreme Court said we have problems. You know, when they annulled the 2017 election.
Yeah.
You know, but it's done nothing to fix them. And this is my problem: is the BBI is not fixing our issues. It's more concerned with the political arrangements of Kenyatta and Odinga and their pals, not really looking at what does the country require, what's important for the country. And
just quickly, let's get Michael's view on this one as well. Michael, do you agree with the point that there are issues with the electoral system that needs fixing? And Patrick argues that this should have been in place 2 years before the elections, and the elections are next year, so which means seemingly that the government and the country is happy with the electoral system.
Well, I totally agree with him. When it comes to issues, I mean, Kriegler Commission came in and looked into the perennial violence that takes place every 5 years in this country, and every election time. People move their families to the rural areas, and some people's homes have been burned, some people have been killed during election violence. It's not a very easy time, and actually our economy slows down at the same time. I was hoping that there will be a lot of reform within the electoral system, and that is IEBC. Unfortunately, that reform has not taken place. The question that everybody is asking is, why hasn't the reform taken place after this moment? But I want to answer that question with these sentiments. Yes, Patrick might say that a lot of things are not good in this country, and I totally agree with him. We have a lot of teething issues when it comes to electoral system. But remember that when Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga shook hands with President Uhuru Kenyatta, then the demonstration against the ills in the government and mentioning the ills in the government stopped. There was only one person in this country
just
that
like
could mobilize people to go on
just
the street
like that, from that handshake, that everything changed.
Everything changed. That's a reality. There was only one person that could say, go on the street because we don't think that anything good is happening. Go on the street because there's corruption in this country. Don't go to work. And people will go on the street and will not go to work. When he shook hands with this very person that will call on demonstration, that will call on strikes, that will call on holidays, even without them being in the constitution, and say we can't go to work on this day, and people will not go to work and demonstrate in a manner to push the government to do what the citizenry want. Now, when they shook hands, that stop.
Is that the type of person that you... Just quickly, Michael, is that the type of person that you want to see in government? The type of person who calls just willy-nilly for a strike, who calls willy-nilly for people not to go to work?
There were genuine concerns, and the only way that the government could listen to the people was through him calling for such actions, boycotting of businesses, and it took place, and the government made some few changes. Unfortunately, when he shook and then they came together with the president, that stopped. And what is happening today is that the civil society is not able to amount any force to force the government to make changes and radical changes, including what we're experiencing in IEBC today, unfortunately. I wish there would be a stronger opposition. I wish there would be a stronger voice out there that would bring people together and condemn the ills that are taking place in the government in that way, and also call for reforms that are required, like IEBC, Independent Electoral Commission, that should have been required. Remember that IEBC is only having about 3 commissioners now out of 7. I mean, the rest had already gone. Yeah. And the question is, if we want to bring more commissioners into the IEBC to join the very people that bundled the 2017 presidential election and that made the Supreme Court to throw it out in the first leg, it tells you that they were having issues that were not supposed to be done, and they were not relaying the information and the data for the election on time as was required. In fact, at one time they were accusing Otimofo or to have been asleep in the night while the Supreme Court was taking place. You can see that is one area that should have really received a lot of reform.
Okay.
Remember, it is the electoral process that caused violence in this country, and that must be dealt with without any delay.
Just quickly then, in conclusion, as we have this conversation, one of the proposals that was initially made, I'm not so sure whether it is still there, is the proposal for the judicial ombudsman who will be a presidential appointee. Is that still part of the BBI? Michael?
No.
It's not part of the BBI? Okay.
No.
What, do you remember what the intention was behind
It's
that?
not part of the BBI anymore.
Do you remember what the intention was behind that?
I think the intention behind that was to have an ombudsman. Correct. I remember, and I read it, it was in the BBI. The intention of having a judiciary ombudsman was to have appointed by the president. One is, the problem with that was that will be an appointee of the executive. In other words, that individual will be taking orders. That will take away the independence from the judiciary. And so, if the executive were to appoint that individual, then you'll be having the control, of the judiciary through backdoor, having an ombudsman. An ombudsman basically would mean that if there were complaints in the judiciary, then they will be taken to the ombudsman, and the ombudsman will arbitrate and find an amicable way of doing that. That's exactly the job of JSC in this case, and there was no absolutely any reason why an ombudsman needed to have been appointed. We want an independent judiciary, and having an independent judiciary is very, very important for the growth and development of this country. If you have executive and the politicians controlling the judiciary, then we go back to where we came from, and that was very clear in 2010 Constitution that we needed an independent judiciary. And so I think that was just a mischief of the government trying to control the judiciary through backdoor, but people made noise about it, and it was removed from the BBI.
Then quickly in conclusion, Michael, let's start off with you. Do you see Raila Odinga standing for elections through his party, and his party endorsing him as a presidential candidate? And do you see William Ruto, as you said, that would go at it, being endorsed by Jubilee?
William Ruto will not be endorsed by Jubilee. He is actually insinuated that if he's running for president, he might run for president in another outfit. They already have a party that is inclined to him, and I think he's going to run for president in that particular party. And I don't think he's going to go with Jubilee at all. In terms of, Honorable Raila Odinga running for president, I strongly believe that Honorable Raila Odinga is going to run for president. I don't see him. He said it very clearly that he's not going to endorse anybody, and that could only leave him to run for president. And I know they've opened a gateway for other presidential aspirants to make an application with the ODM party. But I can tell you the ODM party has what is called an election board. And that board will decide who runs for president, but no one will have the credence, no one will have the CV, no one will have the ability to run for president in ODM party, like Raila Odinga will. And so, give or take, Raila Odinga will run for president.
Patrick, same question to you.
I think that in the coming days we will see what happens. I think we've got to look forward to March and March. I think it's March 17th, if I'm not wrong, when the courts will be sitting to talk to adjudicate the cases that have been launched against this process. And there's no guarantee that we're going to a referendum. We'll see what the courts say about that. But that said, when we go to the elections, I think the focus really has got to be on what is for the good of the country.
But do you see William Ruto running on a Jubilee ticket?
I don't think that Jubilee will exist, at least in its current form, after 2022. If you look at the history of Kenyan parties, from NAC coalition to the PNU coalition in 2008, till now, all those ruling coalitions who fell by the wayside. So I doubt that Jubilee will exist, but I agree. I think Ruto will be running.
Thank you so much for that. Patrick Gathara there and Michael Agwanda joining us from Kenya around the political developments that are taking place in Kenya. What will happen in the year 2022 when Kenyans go to the polls? Let's finish off with this story. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration says Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine is effective at lowering the risk of hospitalization or death. The FDA could now approve the single-shot dose as early as Saturday, making it America's third approved vaccine. Nick